This is a presentation on factoring trinomials by grouping by Mathematically Marcia. Okay, we're going to use grouping to factor this trinomial. The first few steps will be the same as the other methods I've used in some of my other videos. But what you want to do first is you want to identify A, which is 1, B, which is negative 16, and C, which is 63. We're going to do A times C, which would be 1 times 63, which would be 63. Now we're going to list the factors of 63. Since it's positive, remember when you multiply two positives, or if you multiply two negatives, you get a positive. So our signs need to be the same. But we have to add them to equal B. So we want negatives so that it will equal, so that when we add, we get a negative. So negative 1 times negative 63 does not add up to negative 16. Negative 3 times negative 21 also does not add up to negative 16. Negative 7 times negative 9, and that does work. Negative 7 plus negative 9 equals negative 16. So this is the pair we want. So what we're going to do now is we're going to copy our problem, except for the middle term we're going to change to minus 7x minus 9x. Because those are the two factors that multiplied to equal 63, but add to equal 16. Now that we did that, we can start grouping in order to solve this. So we put these two in groups, these two. Notice the negative goes inside the group, and then we put a plus sign in between them. Now for each group, find your common factor. So for this first group, that common factor is x. And then we're going to take everything else and divide it by x. Then for the second group, common factor is going to be negative 9. I'm going to put negative because notice my first term is negative, and we want the first term to be positive. All right, and so that gives us x, and then x minus 7. And we can go ahead and change this to minus 9. And we also have x minus 7. So now we can see here that we have a common factor of x minus 7. So if we were to pull that out, divide both of these by x minus 7, that's going to leave you with x minus 9. So our two factors are x minus 7 and x minus 9. Now you can check this by foiling. Let's take x minus 7, x minus 9. You do the first, x squared, the outer, minus 9x, the inner, minus 7x, and the last, plus 63. Combine those, and you get minus 16x plus 63. So that means x minus 7, x minus 9 is my correct answer. Okay, another example. Remember, we're basically going to break the middle term down into 2 so that we can use grouping. So let's identify A, which is 3, B, which is plus 11, and C, which is minus 4. So when we do A times C, that would be 3 times negative 4, it'll be negative 12. Now our signs need to be different because we need a positive and a negative in order to get a negative answer when multiplying. And since B is positive, we want the larger number to be positive so that when added together we get a positive answer. So negative 1 times 12. And that actually works, so we don't have to keep going. Negative 1 plus 12 equals 11. So we can rewrite our problem. 3x squared, but instead of plus 11x, we'll say minus x plus 12x. Combined, that does give us plus 11x, and then minus 4. Now we want to group together, and then we need to find the common factor for each group. For this first group, my common factor is just x. So we have 3x squared minus x, and we divide each of these by x. And then for our second group, my common factor is going to be 4, because 12x and 4 are both divisible by 4. And then we divide each of those by 4. Okay, and then after simplifying the division, we have x, and then 3x minus 1 plus 4 and 3x minus 1. And if you do this correctly, you will always see common factor here, which is 3x minus 1. So when I divide that by 3x minus 1 and divide that by 3x minus 1. So that cancels and leaves you with x plus 4. So we have 3x minus 1 and x plus 4. So now let's FOIL it to check. So 3x minus 1, x plus 4. So the first is 3x squared, the outer plus 12x, the inner minus x, and the last minus 4. So 3x squared plus 11x minus 4. So that means that 3x minus 1, x plus 4 is our correct answer. All right, another example. Remember, first thing we want to do is identify A, which is 5, B, which is negative 6, and C, which is negative 8. And then A times C would be 5 times 8, which is negative 40. We have a negative again, so our signs need to be different again. But this time, B is negative, so we want the larger number negative. That way when I add them together, I get a negative answer. So we can do 1 times negative 40 does not add up to negative 6. 2 times negative 20 doesn't work either. 4 times negative 10, and that's the one we're looking for because 4 plus negative 10 equals negative 6. So now we're going to rewrite our problem, but we're going to break b into 2 parts. Break it down. Instead of negative 6x, we'll say plus 4x minus 10x, which if you combine those, it would still be negative 6x, and minus 8. Okay, now we group together. Remember, negatives always go inside the parentheses, and then you need to add a plus sign in between them when you have a negative like that. Okay, now look for the common factor of each group. For the first group, you have 5x squared plus 4x. The only thing they have in common is the x. Now in the next group, notice they're both negative. And the common factor for this group, the second group will be negative 2. I'm going to use the negative since they're both negative and both numbers are divisible by 2. Now, that gives, we now have x, 5x plus 4 minus 2, and then 5x plus 4. Again, you should always have a common factor. If you don't, you messed up. You see right here, they both have 5x plus 4. So that's now my common factor. And so we can divide both of these by that common factor. And so I have 5x plus 4. And then when I simplify and take off that common factor, we're left with x minus 2. And let's FOIL to check. 5x plus 4 times x minus 2. The first is 5x squared, outer minus 10x, inner plus 4x, and the last minus 8. Then combine those. 5x squared minus 6x minus 8, which is what we started with. So 5x plus 4, x minus 2 is the correct answer. Before we identify a, b, and c, we can see that this whole trinomial has a common factor. You want to start by taking that out. And that factor would be 2. And then we can divide each of these by 2. So I now have 3x squared plus 7x plus 2. Now, we're not going to do anything else with that 2, but it is going to remain part of my answer. It'll just kind of be a permanent fixture. It'll just stay there. All right, now let's identify a, b, and c. So a is 3, b is 7, and c is 2. So now when we do a times c, we have 3 times 2, which is 6. Everything's positive, so our factors will be positive. You got 1 times 6, and we already found the pair that works because 1 plus 6 does equal 7. So remember, keep our permanent fixture here, the 2. And then we have 3x squared. The 7x, we're going to split into plus x and plus 6x. which if we combine those, it would be 7x, and then plus 2. Now we can group these together. And in our first group, our common factor is x. So we have 3x squared plus x, and we'll divide each of these by x. For our next group, the common factor is 2. 6x and 2 are both divisible by 2. So then we'll divide them both by 2. Notice again that common factor we pulled out in the beginning is just kind of sitting there. It's a permanent fixture. So that gives me x, and then 3x plus 1 plus 2, 3x plus 1. Do you see that common factor again? If it's not there, then we messed up. So we're going to take this part and divide it by that common factor. So we have the 2 that we took out from the beginning, that permanent fixture, 3x plus 1. And when we cancel out that common factor, I'm left with x plus 2. So now let's check. 2, 3x plus 1, x plus 2. So let's FOIL the binomials. That gives you 3x squared, the outer, plus 6x, the inner, plus x, and the last, plus 2. Combine, you get 7x plus 2, combining the two middle terms there. Now let's distribute the 2. So that gives me 6x, multiplying everything by 2, plus 14x plus 4, which is what we started with. So 2, 3x plus 1, x plus 2 is my final answer. Okay, this particular example does not have a common factor, so we can go ahead and identify A, B, and C. A is 2, B is 5, C is 4. Let's do A times C, should be 2 times 2, which is 4. Everything's positive, so all of our factors will be positive. Of 1 times 4, and that one works because 1 plus 4 does equal 5. So we have 2x squared instead of 5x. We'll split it into xy plus 4xy. And then we'll keep the plus 2y squared. And then group them together. For your first group, you have 2x squared plus xy. Our common factor is x. And for the second group, our common factor is 2y. So that gives me x, 2x plus y, plus 2y, 2x plus y. And again, here is our common factor, which you should always have unless you messed up and did something wrong. So 2x plus y is your common factor. So that's my first factor. And when I cancel those out, I'm left with x plus 2y. So now let's FOIL to check. Give myself some room here. All right, 2x plus y, x plus 2y. So the first is 2x squared, the outer, plus 4xy, the inner, plus xy, and the last, plus 2y squared. Combine those. And I get 2x squared plus 5xy plus 2y squared, which is what I started with. So 2x plus y, x plus 2y is our correct answer. All right, A is 1, B is -1, and C is -6. We do A times C, we get -6. It's negative, so my signs need to be different. B is negative, so the larger number is negative. So 1 times -6 doesn't work. 2 times -3. That works because 2 plus -3 equals -1. So now we rewrite our problem, but we change the middle term. We split it up into plus 2xy minus 3xy. Again, if you were to combine those, you'd get the -1xy that we had. And then we have minus 6y squared on the end. Now, let's group it together. Again, remember when you have a negative, it goes in the parentheses. The plus sign always comes out. So our first group, x squared plus 2xy, my common factor is x. And then for the second group, minus 3xy minus 6y squared, my common factor is minus 3y. So we need to divide them both by -3y. That way we can get them back to positives. So now I have x plus 2y minus 3y, and x plus 2y. So again, we can see our common factor is x plus 2y So that's the first part of my answer. And when I cancel that out, I'm left with x minus 3y. So let's FOIL to check it. X plus 2y times x minus 3y. Do the first, get x squared, the outer, minus 3xy, the inner, plus 2xy, and the last, minus 6y squared. Combine those. It's 1, but we don't typically write the 1 because it's assumed, and that is what we started with. So x plus 2y, x minus 3y is my correct answer. All right, we have a common factor again on this one, so let's take that out first. All of these are divisible by 2. So that gives me 2 6x squared minus 17xy plus 12y squared. Now remember that common factor that we took out just becomes a permanent fixture. We don't do anything with it, but it just stays there and remains part of our final answer. So now let's identify A, B, and C. A is 6, B is negative 17, and C is 12. So when we do A times C, we have 6 times 12, which is 72. So the factors of 72, they need to be the same because 72 is positive, but they're going to need to be negative since B is negative. So negative 1 times negative 72, negative 2 times negative 36, negative 3 times negative 24. None of these add the negative 17 yet. Negative 4 times negative 18. That doesn't work. 5 won't go into it. Negative 6 times negative 12. Close, but still doesn't work. Negative 8 times negative 9. That's the one we want because negative 8 plus negative 9 equals negative 17. All right, let's rewrite our problem now. We have 6x squared instead of 17xy. We'll put minus 8xy minus 9xy and then plus 12y squared. And then we can group together. Again, remember when you group, negative always goes in the group, never in between the groups. And then you need to fill in a plus sign because it's not multiplication. So you need the plus sign. So now our first group, the common factor, will be 2x. Don't forget we still have this 2 out front that remains part of our answer. The second group is going to be negative 3y. Since that first term's negative, you want to go ahead and divide by a negative. So we're dividing these by 2x, dividing these by negative 3y. So now we have 2x times 3x minus 4y minus 3y, 3x minus 4y. Okay, so now we can see our common factor again, which is 3x minus 4y. And we'll divide each of these by 3x minus 4y. So my first part of my answer, we got to keep the 2 that we took out in the beginning, that permanent fixture there. And when I cancel these out, I'm left with 2x, got that parentheses there, left with 2x minus 3y. And let's check it. We have 3x minus 4y, 2x minus 3y. So first, 6x squared, outer minus 9xy, inner minus 8xy, and last plus 12y squared. And then combine the two middle, 6x squared minus 17xy plus 12y squared. Now distribute the 2. So 12x squared minus 34xy plus 24y squared, which is what we started with. So 3x minus 4y, 2x minus 3y is the correct answer. All right, on this one, we have a common factor of 3 and z. So we will pull out a 3z. That leaves me with 3z, 2x squared plus 5xy minus 12y squared. Now to identify A is 2, B is 5, and C is negative 12. So A times C would equal negative 2 times 12, or 2 times negative 12, which is negative 24. Signs are different because that's negative, and the larger number is going to be positive, since B is positive. So negative 1 times 24, negative 2 times 12, negative 3 times 8. That works because negative 3 plus 8 equals 5, which is what B is. So remember again, this common factor is kind of a permanent fixture. We just leave it there. So 2x squared. Take 5xy, split it into minus 3xy plus 8xy minus 12y squared. Notice again 3xy plus 8xy would combine to 5xy. Now we group together. Keep our permanent fixture, 3z there. And then the first group, our common factor, is x. And for the second group, our common factor is 4y. So we now have 3z, and then x minus 3y plus 4y, 2x minus 3y, and then 4y, that parentheses going the wrong way, 2x minus 3y again. And we can once again see our common factor, just 2x minus 3y. So the first part of my answer is that permanent fixture, and then 2x minus 3y. And when I cancel that out from each of these terms, we're left with x plus 4y. All right, now let's check it. 3z, 2x minus 3y, x plus 4y. Let's FOIL first. Get your first, be 2x squared, your outer, plus 8xy, your inner, minus 3xy, and your last, minus 12y squared. And now combine our middle terms. 3z, 2x squared plus 5xy minus 12y squared, and then distribute the 3z. So 6x squared z plus 15xyz minus 36y squared z, which is what we started with. So 3z, 2x minus 3y, x plus 4y is my final answer. If you have questions, comments, or requests for future videos, please share them in the comment section below. Also subscribe to my channel to see more videos like this. And thank you for watching.